mentioned that high-resolution mass spectrometry is very important to your work. I'd like to ask you about a few other techniques. So you talked about the mass spec, what about LC-MS and LC-tandem-MS?
Yes, very important. In fact, for some of these emerging environmental contaminants that we're now looking at for potable wastewater reuse applications, a lot of those compounds are very polar, some are very high molecular weight and are not GC-able essentially. And so, so we're dividing them up. The ones that are naturally amenable for LC-MS/MS, we're using LC-MS/MS for those, and the ones that are more naturally suited for GC-MS, we're doing those by GC mass spec. So both techniques are very, very important.
What about two-dimensional GC?
Oh yeah, I love two-dimensional GC. In fact, was doing a little bit of that when I was at EPA. Now that I've moved to the University of South Carolina, I don't have a 2D GC instrument yet, but I'd love to get my hands on one of those. So they're wonderful. So for GC mass spectrometry, these very complex samples, you can have just these horrendous looking chromatograms depending, especially in some of like, for example, our swimming pool extracts are just horrendous amount of compounds. And the beautiful thing is with GC, you can spread out in 2 dimensions that GC chromatogram, and peaks that were tiny peaks hidden under monstrous peaks, you can see them now clearly. And the other great thing about that technique is that they separate out into homologous series. And so if you don't know, you're like what we're doing, looking at unknown compounds, and you know what some other things are in that homologous series, that line in the GC mass spec pattern, but you don't know this other unknown. It gives you a clue by seeing what other things fall along that same series, and you get an idea of what that unknown compound might be. So it's a great technique, and we used it actually for this large European epidemiologic study of drinking water that we got involved in. And so we took drinking waters from 11 different cities in different countries in Europe and used GC with time-of-flight mass spectrometry to pull that complex mixture of drinking water DDPs apart. It really helped us identify some new things.
Wow. So tell me a little bit more about that study. Do you have some initial results? Or?
We do. We published the first phase of that study, I think it was in 2012. We published the first paper in Environmental Science and Technology, and we are working on the second phase of that study now, identifying some more things. And I was working closely also with the toxicologist, Dr. Michael Pleva from the University of Illinois. I've worked with for several years, and also epidemiologists from Barcelona. And so we're pulling all those pieces of information together, really important for solving important human health issues like with the drinking water DBP. So really nice to hone in and work with the toxicologists and epidemiologists.